Hello juniors and welcome back to programming. For this video we're going to be going through project 4 and how to actually make it. So when you're in the project 4 module, you can see the project 4 video, which is the one you're watching currently, and then the project 4 activity prompt, which takes you to this submission page. You'll be submitting a link to your GitHub repository, that is project 4, but there's a link to the activity prompt which takes you to here. Again, our project 4 is rock, paper, scissors. So we'll be actually making a game where you can play rock, paper, scissors against the computer. So we have the what and why, the requirements. So let's go down to our steps and let's talk about the programming process again. Again, just a review, we have objective, pseudocode, and code. Objective is the sentence summary and the to-do list. The pseudocode is a more in-depth to-do list that's structured like a program. So now that we understand functions, we know that when we're structuring this pseudocode, that all the functions will go at the top of the program because that's how functions go and that's how it's structured. And then finally, code, which is the final step, and it's the actual code of the program. So here's all the pieces of the project in this class. We have the objective, the need to know section, the your task, pseudocode, and that's it. Oops. Oh yeah, we're all good. Okay. So to begin project 4, all the stuff we need is right down here. So let's go through our objective. The objective of this program is to make a rock, paper, scissors game for the user to play against the computer. Here are all the tasks. So there should be a loop that repeats the whole game, and the game should go as follows. It welcomes the user by saying, "Welcome to rock, paper, scissors, best 2 out of 3, press Q to quit." Then it creates variables to keep track of scores, so a variable for the user score, a variable for the computer score. It begins a loop to repeat rounds until someone wins. So someone wins when they have 2 rounds. We'll talk about rounds down here. Then once a round is over, once someone has won both rounds, it'll print "Thank you for playing," print out the final scores, and if the users win, it'll print "You win," and if the computer wins, then it'll print "CPU wins." And then once this whole loop is done, it'll repeat the whole game until the user chooses to quit. In each round, that's going to be a loop of itself. So you're going to have a loop inside of a loop. And each round is going to start with the user choosing rock, paper, or scissors. Then you're going to generate a random choice from the computer for the computer. So the computer is going to choose rock, paper, or scissors. Then you're going to check the user's input against the CPU's choice to see who won the round. So if the user won, you're going to add a score to the user's score, then print out the scores, user score and computer score. Else if the computer won, you're going to add to the computer scores and then print out the scores again. Else if there's a draw, then you're going to print out draw and print out the user score. Else if they enter Q, you're going to end the round and the game loop. Else if the user didn't enter an accepted input, you're going to prompt them to try again. So you'll have an else statement that catches all the wrong inputs when they don't put rock, paper, or scissors, and you're going to say not an option, try again. And then you'll repeat the round until someone wins. So there can be many rounds because people can draw. So it's just going to keep going over and over until someone gets over the winning amount, which is winning 2 rounds. So it's best 2 out of 3. So here's the need to know. You'll have to have completed these sections as well as all the units before it. And you're also going to need to understand .lower, .import random, .random.choice, or random.choice list, and then break. So we're going to go over to Eclipse and let's make a module called practice, and I'll go through all of this, all of these different ones. So the first one we have, is .lower. You've already gone through this in the previous project, so if you need a review, you can always look back at that project. The next one is import random. So what this does, if we just type import random. This is a more complex idea that we will cover in further units. For now, all you need to understand is that it gives us access to more functions, and we need this for our project. We need one function. One of the functions it gives us access to is random.choice. So it gives us access to this .choice thing. So, or this .choice function. The random refers to this. So you're going to put this at the top of your program, and you're going to import random, and then you're going to have random.choice. So you call random because that's the name of it, and you're going to have .choice, which is the function that we're using. So you put a list in between the parentheses, and it will return one of the items in the list, one of the a random item from the list. So let's delete this, and let's make a list, and let's make it 3 string variables: rock, paper, and scissors. Now, we'll have a CPU choice of a random.choice from list. So this is going to look at this list, and it's going to pick a random choice from this list. So a random choice from this list, and it's going to save it as CPU choice. So let's print this. We'll print CPU choice. And now let's just keep running this program. Whoops, that's the old one. So we got to click on it. Make sure we hit the drop down, run as Python run. So paper. So we got paper for the first one. And we got rock, scissors, paper, rock, paper. So it just picks a random one. It's a fairly simple thing, but we need both these two lines. We need the import random, because that gives us access to this random library that has all these functions attached to it. And then we're going to use this function .choice to choose a random item from the list. So what we're going to use this for is this right here. We'll make a list of the 3 choices that the CPU can have: rock, paper, or scissors, and then we'll use random.choice to get a random choice for that for the CPU choice. So the CPU gets to randomly choose rock, paper, or scissors. And this is so that when we face it, when we as a user choose one, we're facing a random answer. The last one we need to talk about is break. You've already, as you can see, so we've talked about .lower, import random, random.choice. Now we'll talk about break. Again, we've already covered this in a different video. So if you need to review it, you can go back to the loops video and check it out. But basically, you just use this with loops to end the loop, and it'll break the loop and end it where it is. So let's go back to our activity prompt. Your task, now we're on your task. Your task is to create pseudocode for the project by following our video and then code the project using the objective given to you. So we're going to be coding the pseudocode along with you. So I'll go through this pseudocode with you in this project, and you'll get a chance to see how we actually write the pseudocode. Then you're going to code the project with the objective and pseudocode we've given you. Again, you must have a starting multi-line comment on the top of your program that says what the program does and who the author is. You also need to add a comment above each of the if, elif, else statements that explain what the statements are doing. So we're going to have really complex if, elif statements. So we need to have these comments above them, kind of like how we have comments above functions, but we'll just have single lines that will tell us what the if, elif statements are doing and what are the different choices. So to complete this project, you're going to follow the process. You're going to make a PyDev project called rock, paper, scissors. You're going to make a new py.py module called rock, paper, scissors. And you're going to write the starting comment. Then you're going to write the pseudocode by following this video. code the project, run the project and check for any bugs, look for red errors or when your project doesn't do what it's supposed to, and then submit the project on GitHub, then onto Canvas following the instructions on the GitHub submission process. You're going to have 1 point for each of the starting comments, 1 point for each loop being set up correctly. So there's 2 different loops, and you're going to have 1 point for each. 1 point for all the messages to the users. So there's 8 different messages that you're going to send to them between all these different things. And then 1 point to be able to run the project, and 1 point for it being submitted on GitHub correctly. So now what we're going to do is actually go through the pseudocode line by line and talk you through it. So we're going to start with this objective. Let's go back to the objective. So first we're going to have to make the loop to repeat the whole game. So let's start with this idea of this whole game. So I'm going to go back to my rock, paper, scissors project, and I'm going to make a new module, and I'm just going to call this test because this will be a test project for me. You're going to fill in this. So I already got the author. And then you can fill this in with what the project does, which is basically our objective. So again, the first thing we're going to do is start this loop that has this whole game. But first we know that we need this import, and I'm going to write this all as comments, import random. We know first that we have to import this random because we're going to need to do this. Next, we're going to make a Boolean variable called keep playing. And this variable is going to track whether they want to keep playing. Just got to delete this extra C. So we're going to make this Boolean variable called keep playing. And this variable is going to keep track of that big loop and see whether they want to keep playing and want to continue the game. And we're going to set this to true. So we'll set keep playing to true so that it starts the loop. So now we'll actually make this loop, make a loop, a game loop that continues while keep playing is true. So we'll make this loop. Let me get rid of some of this extra. We're going to make a loop that while keep playing is true, it'll go. So while parentheses keep playing, parentheses colon, and then we'll have our code block inside. And what this is going to do is now, as soon as we want the game to stop, we just set keep playing to false and the game will end. And that's a quick way of doing it. So now I'm going to tab in because now we are inside of the loop. Remember how for functions and loops and conditional statements, if else statements, you need to have it tabbed in. So this tab is tabbing in for the loop so you can tell what code is inside of the loop and what code is outside of it. So the first thing we're going to do once we're in the loop is we're going to print out a statement to welcome the user to the game. So this will be this welcome statement from here. Welcome to rock, paper, scissors. Best 2 out of 3. Press Q to quit. So that's the statement we'll put there. Then we're going to make a variable. Make variables. All the variables that we need. So we'll make a user score and a CPU score to track the different scores. Because since this loop basically starts the game, and each start of the game, because we want to be able to repeat this whole game, we're going to make this program so that the whole game is inside of this one loop. So they can just keep playing over and over and repeating the games over and over, best 2 out of 3, until they want to quit, and then they just use Q. So once the game starts, we're going to make variables called user score and CPU score. Oops, there's a messed up capital. And we're going to set them to 0. You're going to set them both to 0 because at the beginning of the game, they're both 0. Now, this is where we actually get into the round. So we've welcomed the user. We made the scores. Now we're going to start the rounds, the loop that repeats each round. So you're going to make a loop or a round loop that continues while the user score or CPU score is less than 2. So you're going to make a loop that while user score is less than 2 and CPU score is less than 2, then do the code inside here. And so now we're tabbing again because we're inside of another loop. So now we're 2 tabs in because we're inside of 2 loops, because this loop is inside of this one. And so let me just put loop in front of this so that you can kind of tell where these loops start. So now you got these 2 loops, and we can even name them. We'll name it loop 2, loop 1, and loop 2. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing that so you can see that this is where loop 1 is, and now loop 2 is inside of that. So now we got to go one more tab, which is inside of loop 2. So now we're inside of loop 2. We're going to use this input function, to get a choice from the user. Rock, paper, or scissors. So we can give them those options and tell them to choose rock, paper, scissors. And then we're going to store the choice in a variable. So make sure that once you get that input from them, you're going to store that. And so now we're inside of this. We're having a user choose rock, paper, scissors, or quit. So make sure that they have the quit option as well, or Q. Oops. I'll just put it like that. Q. Next, once we have a choice for the user, we're going to have to generate a random choice for the computer. So you're going to, let me go back. Boop. You're going to make a list of choices. So the possible choices are rock, paper, or scissors. Then use random.choice to get a random choice for the CPU. Store the choice in a variable. So just like we have the user's choice stored in a variable, so we have the user generate a choice. They enter rock, paper, scissors, and then we store that. And then we have to generate a random choice for the computer and store that in a variable. Next, what we're going to do is make the if, elif, else statements to check the user's input against the CPU choice. Note that you will have to compare the user's choice and the CPU choice to rock, paper, and scissors separately and combine them with with logical operators. So I'm going to put everything that I just said onto the onto this. So make a if, elif, else statement to check the user's input against the CPU's choice. Be nice if I could spell. Okay, and then note, you will have to compare the user's choice and the CPU choice to rock, paper, and scissors separately and combine with logical operators. So here's an example. Whoops. Operators. So here's an example of a tie. So the actual code, I'm going to put this in a multi-line comment, but the actual code of this would look like if, and you have to pay attention to all the parentheses that I'm using here. So if user, the user choice equals rock, and the CPU choice equals rock, and two equal signs, remember, because we're comparing. So we know that if the user enters rock and the CPU enter rock, that will be one condition for winning. Or another condition is the user enters paper and the CPU equals rock, or and the CPU equals paper. So we put the final parentheses. So this is our second condition, is that both the user and the CPU enter paper. Our third and final condition for a tie is that the user equals scissors and the CPU equals scissors. Now we put our parentheses for, we put our parentheses for this condition. So then this is the final condition. The user and the CPU both enter scissors. And then we have to put one final parentheses because that connects it to this first parentheses. So, and now it's all in one thing. This is one large logical expression. It's got logical operators and comparison operators in it. And it's all one big conditional statement. Now the cool thing you can do with Eclipse is if it gets too big and it goes over the edge, you can go to the point where it does that and click enter, and let's take this out of a multi-line comment so I can show you what it, so that it does it correctly. But if we take out the multi-line comment, so that's gone now, we can enter this and it stays entered over. You can back it up a little bit and now it'll all fit in one spot or in a couple of lines instead of having it all in one. But never forget the final colon. So I'm going to put this multi-line comment back because this is just an example. But after this, you would put, and now this is still tabbed in, so then you'd put your code block there. So just because this is tabbed in, it doesn't change anything. This is still one tab and it's inside of this if statement. This is just the ending of the logical, the conditional statement or logical expression, whatever you want to call this. This is just one big comparison with a bunch of little things inside of it. But this is an example of the tie. So either the user and the CPU both do rock, the user and the CPU both do paper, or the user and the CPU both do scissors. Now you can take this syntax that we just made here and you can use this for all of them, because for example, if the user were to win, the user would input rock and the CPU would input paper. So you could just copy this 4 times and adjust it. Just make sure that you adjust it correctly so that for each one, it actually does it correctly. And then in the block, you're just going to do the appropriate code. So I'm going to give this to you just to be nice. But if we were, if the user lost or ties, which is what we got right here, this is if the user won. Let's go to if the user draw, you're going to print out draw. So print draw. And then what does it say to do? Then print out the user score. And it's got to be user : the number plus computer : the number. So we'll print out user : and remember we got to put this ending. Let's take this all out of the multi-line comment again so that you can see the code. And now remember we got to use this string function that we learned about in an earlier project, and we're going to use it to turn the user score. And then we'll do a plus and put a space CPU got plus string CPU score. And now that's the end of it. And that right there would be this whole section right here. That did one of all of these different. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 else, if, elif, and else's. So there's one if, 1, 2, 3 elifs, and then an else. It's a total of 5 things, and we did one of them. This is the process for a tie. This is an example for if we tied, if the user gets rock and the CPU gets rock, or the user gets paper and the CPU gets paper, or the user gets scissors and the CPU gets scissors, then we're going to print out draw because those are all conditions of a draw, and we're going to print the final score. The only thing to remember is make sure you put this final parentheses to connect it to this last one, because this parentheses went to this one goes to this one, this final one goes over here. So again, you can copy and paste this print because this print statement is going to be in every one. We know that in every single one it says then print out the scores, then print out the scores, then it always says then print out the score. Oh, here's the last one, then print out the scores. So you can use the same one for each one and just change this CPU 1, user 1. But so this next part is making an if-elif statement to check the user's input against this. So you're going to make 5 different if statements. So let's go back and let's keep going through the rest of this pseudocode. So we've got this example here, this example of the tie. So the first condition you're going to check is if the user 1 add 1 to the user's score, then print out the scores. And you're going to follow this same syntax of user colon insert score, and then computer CPU colon number. And that's the end of it. And you can, I forgot this comment right here, but you can just add the comment right here, or the comma, not comma, comment. Then after you check if the user won, then you're going to check if the computer won, because that's another possibility. So then you're going to say else if, which is also known as elif, also known as elif, the computer 1, add 1 to the computer's score, then we're going to print out the scores. And I'm not going to put the same thing, or I'm not going to put it again, but you use the same syntax as right here. Again, else if there's a draw, which is the one, else if it is a draw, print draw. Whoops, and I did it in the exact same syntax. Draw. Then print out the scores. Again, following the same syntax that you've been doing it with all the other ones. It'll be the same print statement over and over. Then we got two more. Else if the user entered Q. So this means if they entered Q, then they'll quit the game, because that's what we want to happen when the user enters queues. So we're gonna end the round, and the game loop. And the way we're going to do this is with a break statement. So you can use the break statement to end the round, which will end the round loop, the loop that we have going right here. This loop 2, the round loop, we'll end that one with a break statement. And we'll remember that this first one is going while keep playing is true. So then we'll make keep playing equal false. Then if keep playing is false, this loop will end because of the break, and this loop will end because keep playing isn't true. So the game will end and they'll quit, and it'll end the game. So that's how we'll do that. And then finally, else the user didn't enter an accepted input. So we're just gonna print not an option. I gotta take this to another line. Try again. So that's all you'll do for else. Else they didn't enter one of these things. They didn't enter rock, paper, scissors, or Q. So then it'll say not an option, or the program will print out not an option, try again. And the loop will restart. It'll restart at loop 2 and allow them to enter another input. So one of the things I didn't tell you about though is, what if the user enters something like this? What if they enter rock all capital? Let me put some space. What if I put rock like this? Or what if they enter rock like this? Is that wrong? No, because it's still rock. So we want to be able to accept their inputs. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this input a little bit. And we're going to say, hey, in this variable, use dot lower to make the user's choice, make the user's choice all lowercase. So for example, if I was getting some input from someone, so I just put a prompt out to someone, I can just add dot lower right here, and now X will be the lowercase version of whatever they input. This is just an example so you can see it all in one, but that's what it would look like, or that's what it will look like when you do it with with the user's choice. So now we've done all of these. We've done the if, elif, else. So we've made the round. This is a whole round because it's going to let the user choose, let the CPU choose. Then it's going to check their choices. Did the user win? Did the CPU win? Was it a tie? Did they want to quit? Or did they just not answer the right thing? And after all that, if they win, it'll add a score. If they lose, it'll add to the CPU score. If they draw, nothing will happen. If they quit, the game will end. And if they don't enter a correct option, then it'll just ask them to enter rock, paper, or scissors again. Then, once we're done with all of that, once we're out of this loop, we're going to back up once. And so we're still inside of this loop 1. See, we're still tabbed in once, but we're outside of this loop 2 because we backed out once. And all we have to do is this final stuff of print out thanks for playing and repeat the whole game. So we go back here, and we're just going to say, you're just going to print out the thank you message, which is right over here. Boop, boop, boop. And then you're going to check who won. So you're going to print out who won. And you're going to use an if statement. So you're going to say, if the user score is 2, then the user won. If the user score, the CPU score is 2, then the CPU won. And then after all this, so there'll be code in here, code after each of those if statements. Then outside of the if statements, you're going to put print, or you're going to print out the final scores. So one more time, you're going to use this print statement to print out who finally won, what the final score was. And if the user won, it should say the user won with the final scores being blank. And then if this one won, it should say the CPU won, and then print out the scores. So let's save all of this. And let's actually go to an example project. So this is all the pseudocode you would need. If you follow this pseudocode, you will complete the whole project and have everything done. And that's because it follows all of the pieces of our objective. So like from the your task section, it shows you you should have followed through this video and got all the pseudocode. Now you're going to go through and actually just code this project. But I want to show you what a final project looks like. So this is a finally coded rock, paper, scissors. If I run this, it welcomes me. Welcome to rock, paper, scissors. Best 2 out of 3. Press Q to quit. And please choose rock, paper, or scissors. Now I'll just choose rock. It was a draw. So the user score is 0 and the CPU score is 0. Let's try rock again. All right, I won once. Let's try rock with a capital R. It still works because the program keeps going, because we have that dot lower on there. That in here, we have the dot lower on the user choice. But it prints out the score again because I won and it added it. Then it said, thanks for playing. You win. Here's your final score. And then it repeats the whole thing again. So it repeats the whole loop again. So as you can tell, this was one loop. It started the game and then ended the game after 3 rounds. It did 3 rounds. Actually 1, 2, 3, and then I won. And then this is the ending stuff. And all of this is just right within here. So if you follow this pseudocode, it will not be that bad. You should be able to just follow it just like you do with the drills and debug and finish the project. Once you're done, you're going to go on to the Project 4 activity prompt submission page, and you'll submit the link to your GitHub repository, which should have your completed project in it. And remember that to check your what you need in this, so you get 1 point for the starting comment, quiz, or for the 1 point for the starting comment, looping setup, messages, project being able to run and submit it on GitHub correctly. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your instructor. Otherwise, I'm going to make this full screen so that you can get an easy look at all of the pseudocode completed. But otherwise, juniors, I will see you later.